Okay, hello guys, welcome to a video here. My name is Carter and I'm going to be ranking every brawler in Brawl Stars. Now, I'm using Tier Maker, a pretty popular website for a wide variety of like just tiers in general, like that you can make tier lists. But one of the issues is this is from May to June 2024, and it is missing the new two brawlers, Clancy and I forget the name, but the other brawler that's coming in the new update. And I'm going to be making this tier list for the upcoming update, like season 28 and season 29. And so that's with the balance changes. I know about some of the balance changes that they're gonna make. So, yeah, and I can just instead of just adding them, I can just tell you what my personal opinion for those two brawlers are gonna be. So yeah, so we're and just a disclaimer. Oh yeah, let me add a tier. Just as a disclaimer, there are going to be, this isn't necessarily going to be made in any particular order, but I'm gonna try. I can try to make it like so that it's kind of in a little bit of an order, like from ranking from F to S. And I already have an idea of some of like the brawlers that are gonna be the F tier, some of the brawlers that are gonna be the S tier. But regardless, we'll just see how it goes. So yeah, so let's go right into it. So starting off with the worst brawler in the game, I think the worst brawler in the game currently, I think, is Daryl. I think Daryl is currently just not so good of a brawler. He hasn't received a lot of recognition from Supercell. He hasn't received any massive buffs or any really nerfs recently, but he's just consistently not been one of the better brawlers. Both of his gadgets aren't really that good. Both of his star powers aren't good. He's lacking a hypercharge. He's lacking good damage, and he's just overall just not the best brawler. So that's why I decided to put him in F tier. Yeah, so next up, another brawler that is also an F tier is Doug. I think that Doug is also just currently not the best brawler. Likewise to Daryl, he hasn't received any large buffs. He hasn't received any large nerfs recently, and he hasn't received a lot of recognition from the Supercell developers. So like he's just not that good, really. Like I think that if they want to buff Doug, I think giving him a bit of a buff, it could be many ways, like attack damage, etc., or reload speed even. I think that if they just give him a slight buff, I think that he could become a better brawler. Maybe not the best, but a better brawler. Now, next up, also in the F tier, I'm going to put Penny. Penny is just severely lacking as a brawler. Likewise to Daryl and Doug, hasn't received any buffs, hasn't received any nerfs, but or at least recently. And with that, she's just really just not a good brawler. And it's just kind of, I think that a like buff would make her very, very good, because at times she can really be good, but I think that her attack damage, consistency, just not the best brawlers. Yeah, so those are going to be the brawlers for the F tier. Oh wait, oops, I forgot one. And the final brawler in the F tier is going to be Hank. Hank actually, for season 20 and season 29, actually received a little bit of a health buff. His health is going up slightly. I think it's 10%. I could be wrong with that, but but regardless, I think that he still is not a good brawler. I think that his bubble charging not in bushes, and some other nerfs that they gave him really just makes him not the best and not an extremely consistent brawler. So yeah, so those are the brawlers in F tier. I don't think that there's any other brawlers that belong in the F tier for the season. So yeah. So moving on to the D tier. In the D tier, my first brawler that I'm going to place in the D tier is Gus. Gus has always just not been the best brawler. He can be solid in like knockout and wipe out and etc., but he just kind of lacks the qualities that a lot of the better long range brawlers such as Brock or I guess you could say like Piper or some other brawlers have, and that just makes him not a strong, not a very consistent brawler. So yeah. Also in the D tier, another just okay brawler, not the best, but has been very good at sometimes, is Maisie. Maisie is just, she did actually receive a supercharge buff for the recent update that is coming out soon, but she just still isn't a consistent brawler. She just really isn't, just that good, honest. And, okay, so yeah, next up in the D tier is Ash. Ash also not consistent, okay in some game modes, but just really lacks some basic qualities that other shorter range brawlers have, such as, Buzz or like BB or something, where he really just needs to get close, and although he's a tank, he really just lacks these qualities that make him a good brawler. Yeah, so unfortunately, Ash is going to be placed in the D tier. Alright, next up in the D tier, actually a bit of surprising, the first legendary brawler placed in the D tier is Crow. Crow is just not a good brawler. At times, he can be very strong, and I think that if he didn't have his hypercharge, he would be an F tier brawler. At times, he can be extremely strong. His hypercharge is very, very good in Heist, but in so many other game modes, he just lacks so much. His range isn't the longest, his damage isn't the best, and overall, he's just really not the best brawler. So that is why I have decided to put him in D tier. Next up, in the D tier, I am also going to put Tara. Tara is also just, she really lacks damage. She her super can be very strong in some game modes, primarily Hot Zone, but the damage that she does is really small in comparison to other brawlers, with the same like I don't know, like Shelly and such, which she just really isn't a strong brawler. So that is why I've decided to put her in the D tier. Okay. Next up in the D tier, we also have Rosa. Rosa is really just also lacking in kills. She has a lot of health. She does a fair amount of damage. She has a strong hypercharge. But the problem with Rosa is she just really lacks the speed, or really lacks the ability to get close to the enemies, and therefore becomes practically useless or of little value in many of the game modes. So that is why I have chosen to put her in the D tier. Now, next up, another brawler that I'm going to put in the D tier is Sam. Now, Sam actually has, I think he has received a few buffs recently, with, some aspects of his kit, but Sam really just lacks, he can be actually a pretty strong brawler, his hardy recovery star power is very good, but, he just really lacks in damage, or not necessarily damage, but he just really lacks in a lot of the necessary qualities that makes a brawler good. So yeah, that is why I have decided to put Sam in the D tier. Now next up, the final brawler for now, at least, unless I decide, the final brawler that I am going to put in the D tier is, please tell me that didn't reset it. Oh, it didn't. Okay, I apologize. It's just a misclick. But the final brawler that I'm going to put in the D tier is Bo. Now, Bo does very good damage in many situations. His arrows, they do a lot of damage. His mines can be good, but that's the problem. His mines are very, 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 just not the strongest. His mines, they can be useful in certain situations. His gadget that sets them off immediately can be okay, and good for wall breaking occasionally. But the one issue that I have with Bo is, it's very, very easy to escape his mines. As many brawlers have hypercharges now, and many brawlers such as Max and Colt with a star power, this some brawlers, they have pretty good speed. It is extremely easy for many brawlers to avoid his super, and therefore his super becomes worthless. It doesn't have a lot of value in many different situations. So that is why I've decided to put Bo in the D tier. Now that completes the D tier for now, at least, unless as I move along I think of any other brawlers that deserve to be in that tier. So yeah. So next up, starting off in the C tier, we have Bull. Now, Bull has a hypercharge. He's an extremely tanky brawler, and he can do tons and tons of damage up close. But the problem with Bull is, likewise to Rosa, it's difficult for Bull to get close to the enemies. You know, he is a tank, he does have a lot of damage, but, you know, unless you're just extremely close to the brawler, like point blank, he just does not do a lot of damage. So that is why I'm putting him C tier. His hypercharge, it's alright. You know, maybe the Supercell could have been a bit more creative, but you know, and it takes a lot of damage, which is good for a tank. But I think that without his gadget, he would easily be a terrible brawler. But he still just lacks in many of the departments that make good brawlers. Yeah, so that is why I've decided to put him in the C tier. Now, next up in the C tier, another legendary brawler, I have Surge. Now, Surge actually can be a pretty strong brawler in many games. He actually can counter a few close-range brawlers. You know, primarily I'm thinking Edgar, but, you know, regardless, he really lacks damage, and he also has not the highest health. So that is why I've decided to put him in C tier. Just isn't that strong of a brawler. Now, next up in the C tier, I also have Mortis. Now, Mortis, in the right situations, Mortis can actually be really strong. He's good in Showdown. He's also pretty good in, like, Gem Grab, and maybe good in, like, Knockout and Wipeout and some other modes. But, you know, just, again, similar to Bull and Rosa, you know, he doesn't have, or not similar to Bull and Rosa, he doesn't have a lot of health, so he finds it difficult to get close to the enemy. His gadget actually is really good with that, but he lacks many qualities that make him a good brawler. So yeah, so that is why I've decided to put him in the C tier. Next up in the C tier, we also have Pam. Now, Pam has consistently just been a very average brawler. She really isn't that good. You know, she can do pretty good damage if you line up her shots right, but her super is a bit underwhelming. Her attack damage is a bit underwhelming. Overall, she's a bit underwhelming, and therefore that makes her a C tier brawler. So that is why I've decided to put her there. Now, next up in the C tier, going up a few tiers from many tier lists, many people's tiers, like Kairos, so I think put him in F or D. I'm choosing to put Chester in the C tier. Now, Chester actually, in the upcoming update, actually received a bit of a rework in a way. They're removing his first star power, which provides him with an extra attack, like, you know, going to 4 pellets, which at times can do, I think, 5,000 damage. They're removing that, adding that to his, like, normal kit, and replacing his star power, which gives him, I think, it's either 50% or double the damage when he does his first pellet, his first attack. So I think that it's a very good damage buff to him, you know, and it makes his damage a bit more consistent, because Chester's a bit of an an inconsistent brawler with his, you know, RNG based skills, and with that. So I think that with this recent buff, or with this upcoming buff, he should be a bit better. Now, next up in the C tier, I'm also going to put Edgar. Edgar, he just has so many counters. You know, I can think of many different brawlers that counter Edgar. Doug counters him. Let's just see so far. Macy can counter him at times. Bull counters him. Surge counters him. Let's see. Piper counters him. Tick can even counter him. Kit. Angelo counters him. Angelo. You know, there's just many different brawlers that can counter him. But Edgar also has a very good hypercharge and a extremely useful shield gadget, the, I think, hardcore gadget, which makes him not the worst brawler, but I just think that if he receives some buffs, I think, or if they nerf some of his counters, he can become just a bit better. So yeah. Next is C tier, Mandy. Mandy is actually also, likewise to Chester, is receiving a bit of a buff in this upcoming update, but Mandy also just lacks a bit on the, I wouldn't say damage, just on the usefulness and the consistency of Mandy. You know, similar to Frank's super, you know, her super takes a bit of time to launch, and unless you get a bit fortunate or unless you have really good placement, Mandy just becomes a pretty inconsistent and overall just not the best brawler. So that is why I decided to put her in C tier. Next up in C tier, 8-bit. I also have decided to put 8-bit in the C tier. Now 8-bit actually can be an extremely good brawler in many different situations. I'm thinking primarily in the Big Friend modifier where he does a ton of damage, you know, especially with his damage booster, and he has a lot of health. But in many other situations in game modes such as Brawl and he's alright in Hot Zone, but Brawl Ball and like Gem Grab, or actually he's good in Gem Grab too. But you know, in such as like Brawl Ball and Wipeout game modes where he's not the best, he just lacks many key qualities and just overall is not a good brawler, or not the best brawler. I shouldn't say a bad brawler, just not the best. Now next up in the C tier, Janet. Likewise to Mandy, just isn't necessarily that good of a brawler. With the nerfs she received quite a while ago, she just isn't become that strong. She's also a bit inconsistent. Her super can be good in some scenarios, but her super can also become very just not useful in other scenarios. That is why I've decided to put her in C tier. Yeah. Next up in the C tier, another brawler in the C tier, we also have Chuck. Now Chuck is very unbalanced, and that is the problem with Chuck. He's broken in Heist. He's by far the best Heist brawler. There's no other brawler that is better than him in Heist, but regardless, he just really isn't that strong in other game modes. You know, Brawl Ball, he's not good. Wipeout, he's not good. Knockout is not good. Hot Zone, he's okay in Hot Zone, but besides, if you're playing him anywhere else than Hot Zone or Heist, he really just is not the best brawler. So yeah, so that is why I've decided to put him in the C tier. So yeah. Next up in the C tier, we have B. B is also similar to Mandy and Janet. She's a long-range brawler, but she just lacks damage. You know, I think that if they gave her a bit of a buff to her damage, she can become very stronger, or maybe like a reload buff or a super buff, like a super range buff or a supercharge buff. She become better, but she is a pretty strong brawler in many situations. Just there are better options when it comes to like longer range brawlers. Yeah, so that's why I've decided to put her in the C tier. Next on the C tier, we also have Willow. Now, Willow is a bit of an interesting character. She's a bit fun to play. You know, her super is pretty unique. You know, there's no other super that, like, takes control of other people. You know, so that makes her a bit special. But, you know, special, that doesn't always mean good. You know, and I think that Willow, she can be a strong brawler. You know, the poison damage, similar to Byron, can be pretty good. But unlike Byron, you know, she just isn't very helpful towards the teammates. But in many situations, I've seen her being used in pro play before. She can be helpful, but only under the correct and right scenario. So that is why I've decided to put her in C tier. You know, maybe, you know, she can jump between C and B, but for now, I'm going to put her in the C tier. So yeah. Next up in the C tier, we have Shelly. Now, Shelly has always just not really been the best brawler. She's consistently just been kind of like mid-tier brawler, and that is why I decided to put her in C tier. She actually can do pretty good damage. You know, her super can be an extremely good counter to many brawlers, like many close-range brawlers. I'm thinking like Jackie, Edgar, even like Fang and Lily and such, but I think that she just lacks a bit of damage, and she lacks a bit of reliability and usefulness in many scenarios. So I am putting her in the C tier. Now, let me just quickly look. Oh yeah. So another brawler in the C tier I'm gonna put is Eve. Now, Eve used to be very, very good. She used to be unique with her water floating abilities, but since the release of Angelo, a brawler that easily outclasses her, and can walk on water, in the game, you know, she just becomes very unreliable. You know, her super can be very good, but also extremely counterable, and, you know, that is why I've decided to put her in the C tier. Another brawler being put in the C tier is Squeak. Not Spike, Squeak. Squeak is actually just kind of fallen off. At times, Squeak can be extremely essential in many situations. He can actually, his gadget, star power are both very good, but he just, his attacks can become very unreliable in many situations. Attack pretty easy to avoid, unless you have very, very good aim. He just is not the best brawler. He lacks in damage, he lacks in reliability, he just lacks overall as a brawler. So that is why I decided to put him in C tier. Next up in the C tier, we have Kit. Now, Kit actually, for a little bit of time, was an extremely good brawler. On release, Kit was easily the best brawler in the game, but then she got nerfed to becoming an F tier brawler, and then they buffed her. She became an A tier brawler, and then recently in the upcoming update, they nerfed her. They nerfed her power on star power, and therefore she becomes a C tier. Now she can actually be pretty useful and pretty helpful in certain scenarios, but I think having that buff and finding it difficult in other situations, where she's very good in solo showdown, but with that she's not as good, she becomes a worse brawler. So that is why I've decided to put her in, or him actually, in the C tier. Next up in the C tier, Bonnie. Bonnie is also similar to Mandy and Janet in the sense that she's pretty long range. She just isn't very reliable. She if she's not in Clyde, if she's not in the cannon or whatnot, she just really doesn't do that much damage, and therefore just isn't the best brawler. So I've decided to put her in the C tier. Just overall, there's better options, and when it comes to both long and close range brawlers. So I'm putting her in the C tier. Next on the C tier, one of the last brawlers that I am deciding to put in the C tier. Where is it? Oh yeah, Grom. Grom is one of, if not the final brawler I'm putting in the C tier. Now, Grom is helpful and good in certain scenarios, but the problem is his attacks are extremely easy and extremely easy to dodge and extremely avoidable. And he can be very good in certain scenarios. I think he could be pretty good in Hot Zone and Brawl, he's alright, but in other situations he just really lacks. He really just isn't the strongest brawler. And I think that this could be the final, unless I think of anything else, but the final brawler that I'm deciding to put in the C tier is Carl. Now, Carl, his mutation was a bit good, but that isn't really necessary when it's in pro play now, because mutations are gone and etc. and they were never used in pro play, I don't think. But regardless, Carl just also isn't a strong brawler. I think that he easily gets outclassed by many brawlers, like the upcoming brawlers. Both of them are pretty good, and he's easy to counter, and his attack is pretty strong, but overall just not the best brawler. So I'm deciding to put him in the C tier. Now, coming up to the B tier, my first brawler that I'm choosing to put in the B tier is Mr. P. Now, Mr. P actually is a pretty underrated brawler. To me personally, he's an underrated brawler. Many people just aren't a giant fan of Mr. P. Now, Mr. P, he actually is an extremely good brawler long range. His splash damage really helps him. His star power is good. Both his gadgets are pretty good. But he lacks a hypercharge, and he lacks usage against close range brawlers. Like if there's an Edgar, or if there's a like Jackie or Jackie or BB or whatnot, if there's a close range brawler, Mr. P becomes borderline useless and unusable in those scenarios. So that is why I'm deciding to put Mr. P in the B tier. Okay. Next in the B tier, another brawler that just lacks in some departments but can be a pretty strong brawler is El Primo. Now, El Primo, his hypercharge is very good. His suplex supplement gadget is pretty good. His star power of Fuego is pretty good. But overall, he just lacks in many of the qualities that make him a good brawler. Now, since he's a tank, he can take a lot of damage and he can be reliable in bushy maps and in other situations. But I think that if they don't, a damage buff could make him a strong brawler, but I think without, that damage and without, his gadget, without a gadget buff, or even like a star power buff, like making El Fuego last longer, etc., he just really just isn't the strongest brawler in the game. So that is why I'm deciding to put him in the B tier. Now next up in the B tier, I have Lola. Now Lola, she also has likewise to Willow a very unique super with her ego, but she lacks a bit on reliability. Her damage is pretty solid, her gadget's pretty solid, her star power is pretty solid, but since she doesn't have that reliability that many of the A tier, S tier brawlers have, she just really isn't the strongest. So that is why I'm choosing to put her in the B tier. Next in the B tier, I have Jackie. Now Jackie is a extremely useful brawler in some bushy maps. She's good at Brawl, she can be used pretty well in Hot Zone, but she also just lacks that ability likewise to like Mortis and who else was I said it? Mortis and Bull to get close to the enemies, therefore becomes pretty unreliable. Her hypercharge is not that good, and therefore she just becomes not the best brawler. So that is why I'm deciding to put her in the B tier next to Lola and Mr. P and whatnot. Okay. Next on the B tier, I have Spike. Now Spike has consistently been an SA tier brawler. He has been extremely good. Now he has always just been a reliable, not the highest skill, but a pretty good brawler. But because of the recent damage nerfs, he just has kind of fallen off from that SA tier, and he's still very good. He can be useful in Hot Zone. He can be useful in like Brawl, in many different game modes, Wipeout, etc. But because of that damage nerf, he becomes not the best. So that is why I'm deciding to put him in the B tier. Next in the B tier, we have Pearl. Now Pearl, likewise to Jackie, or actually not likewise to Lola, she can do pretty good damage when she's at full heat. She can do really good. Her star power is amazing. Her gadget's amazing. But the problem with Pearl is her super can be difficult to use, difficult to get close to the enemies. Heat retention, her heat, can go away pretty quickly. Therefore, she isn't the best brawler in many different situations, and there's better brawlers to pick and use instead of her. So that is why I'm deciding to put her in the B tier. Next in the B tier, Stu. Now Stu is another amazing brawler. If you have high skill and if you are very good with Stu, he is easily become an extremely good brawler. He can be used to counter some brawlers like Edgar, some other brawlers, but the problem is his damage. His super can become pretty easy to counter and easy to predict, and his damage also just isn't high. So I'm choosing to put him in the B tier. Yeah. Next up in the B tier, we also have Dynamite. Now, Dynamite is an extremely well-rounded brawler. I think that he's pretty balanced right now. His hypercharge is really good. He has one of, if not the best gadgets in the game. Both his star powers can be used in the right scenarios. I like the Demolition star power, but Dino Jump can also be really helpful if you know how to use it. But the problem is he just can be easily countered. He can be easily avoided in many scenarios, but in the right scenario, he can really just be strong, and that is why I'm deciding to put him in the B tier. So yeah. Next up in the B tier, we also have Lou. Now, Lou has one of the best hypercharges in the game. He has a good freeze mechanic, which is very helpful to him. He's very, very, very strong in Hot Zone. He can also be strong in Brawl, and etc. But he just lacks damage, and his supercharge could be buffed a little bit to make him just a little bit better, as he lacks some qualities in many different situations. So that is why I'm choosing to put him in the B tier. Yep. So next up in the B tier, we also have Fang. Now, Fang can be an insanely strong brawler. Fang has a very reliable, and useful hypercharge. He can do extremely good damage up close. Both his star powers are right. His roundhouse kick gadget is pretty good. His corn food gadget can be pretty good in Hot Zone. But he just, like, similar to like Edgar and whatnot, he can get countered pretty easily, by a Gene or by an RT, and therefore becomes fairly unreliable in many situations. So I'm choosing to put Fang in the B tier. So next up in the B tier, I have Otis. Now, Otis is actually a pretty underrated brawler. You don't see Otis used that much. You know, Otis and Colonel Ruffs, or Ruffs now, is pretty underrated. You know, you don't see them used too often, and I think that's for not a good reason. I think that Otis is very strong. His super is very useful. His gadget's very useful. But the problem is just getting close to the enemies. He lacks in a bit of damage, and therefore is less reliable. Next on the B tier, I have Miko. Miko just lacks in many departments, making him not a very strong brawler. And you know, he just his star power monkey business, I think it's called, is very useful. You know, he can win a lot of the one-on-one scenarios, but you know, if he's met in many different scenarios, he could just become easily outclassed, easily avoided, and easily killed. So I'm choosing to put him in the B tier, which I think is a pretty fair and a pretty respectable spot. Okay, now next up in the B tier, we only have a few more brawlers that I'm going to choose to put in the B tier. Next up, we have BB. Now, BB is similar to Jackie. She has a lot of health. She can do extremely good damage close range, but the problem is she loses a lot of that health actually getting to the enemies. You know, she's good in bushy maps. Oh, excuse me, she's pretty good in like hot zone, etc. But you know, when you're in a long range map or when you are faced against many brawlers that counter her, she becomes pretty unreliable and a pretty useless brawler. So that is why I'm choosing to put BB in the B tier. And, you know, because, again, she can be strong, she can also be extremely weak. So, yeah. Alright, next up, one of the final brawlers that I'm choosing to put in the B tier is Larry and Lowry. Now, Larry and Lowry, on release, easily best brawler in the game, absolutely broke the game, but after a few nerfs, and after just a little bit of stability, and a little bit of underuse, Larry and Lowry have become not as strong as their prime. Now, they're still a pretty good brawler. They're one of the best throwers. They're very strong and essential in many matchups and very helpful. But I think that, you know, with those nerfs and, you know, not the highest damage, lack of a hypercharge, etc., not the best star power, pretty good gadget. Just, I think that with all those things, Larry and Lowry are just not the best, or Larry and Lowry is not the best brawler. So, yeah. So, I've decided to put Larry and Lowry in the B tier. So, yeah. So, that -1 brawler is going to complete the B tier. Now, the final brawler that I'm deciding to put in the B tier is Ruffs, Colonel Ruffs. I have decided to put Ruffs in the B tier as he, as I've said, him and Otis have become extremely underused and extremely underrated. You know, because Ruffs is actually very strong. He's very good in many game modes. He's very good in many situations. But you know, the problem is he just lacks a hypercharge. His super is also a bit underwhelming. You know, if used in the right scenarios, it can be pretty strong. But you know, since he doesn't have a hypercharge, since he isn't good in many scenarios, he just is not the best brawler. So I'm choosing to put him in the B tier. I think that should complete the B tier, unless I change my decision. That should complete the B tier. So now, all these brawlers left are either going to be put, hopefully, I could be wrong with this, in the in the A tier or the S tier. Now, starting off with the A tier, the first brawler that I'm choosing to put in the A tier is Leon. Now, Leon is an extremely useful brawler. She's useful in many different scenarios. She's good long range, she's good in close range, she has one of the best supers, she has one of the best hypercharges, but after the damage nerf, you know, that she gave her, that Super Sub gave him, he just becomes not the best brawler. He's still pretty good, he's still very essential, but in many areas he is just outperformed. So that is why I'm deciding to put him in the A tier. Strong brawler, just simply not the best. So yeah. Next on the A tier, Buster. Buster is an extremely strong brawler. He does so much damage close range. He has an extremely good super. His trait that charges his super is very good. But the problem is actually getting to the enemies, as I've talked about with Bull and BB and Jackie and whatnot. actually getting to the enemies is the difficult part for Buster, and therefore he becomes not the strongest brawler. I think that if they gave him maybe a bit of a speed boost or a damage buff, he could easily become an S tier brawler. Still very good, just simply not the best. So yeah. Next in the A tier, I have Sprout. Sprout is also a very good brawler. His super is pretty good. His hypercharge is a bit underwhelming, not the best hypercharge, but you know, he actually is a very strong brawler and can counter many close range brawlers and many brawlers. You know, just in general, you know, his attack is very good, does solid damage. So I'm choosing to put him in the A tier. Very strong brawler overall, and just overall pretty good. So I'm choosing to put him in the A tier. Next up in the A tier, I have Charlie. Now Charlie has consistently been an S tier, if not high A tier brawler. But in the recent patch, in the recent or the upcoming update, she has received a bit of a nerf, and she has developed into not the strongest brawler. She received a damage nerf. Damage nerf, and therefore she's still very strong. Her hypercharge is just a bit underwhelming. Her attack damage has been a bit underwhelming. Still a good brawler, just not the best. So I'm choosing to put her in the A tier. Yeah. And I'm in the A tier, Griff. Now Griff just does insane amounts of damage. Griff, he's just so strong. I mean, you know, his super does tons of damage. His attacks do tons of damage. He has an extremely good gadget. He has an extremely essential star power. It's just an overall really good brawler. One thing he lacks is, I think that a bit of a health or a bit of a supercharge buff could help him to become a stronger brawler. But I think for now he's in a good position and easily a very good brawler. Yeah. So I'm putting him in the A tier. Next up in the A tier, Nani. Nani, similar to Leon, is very good both close range and far range. He does so much damage with his attack. His super is just a bit underwhelming. It can be used in very good scenarios, but he has one of the best gadgets in the game that makes up for that. And just overall, just a really strong brawler. Borderline S tier, high A tier. So yeah. Next up in the A tier, I have Gray. Now Gray, similar to Nani, just a very good brawler. His teleporter is insanely good for team play. Extremely just helpful and useful. He also does pretty good damage. He's good at Brawl, he's good at Wipeout, he's good at Knockout, he's good at Showdown, he's good at so many game modes, and he has, over time, just developed and become one of the best brawlers. He has received a buff in the nerf in the newest update, and that is why I'm choosing to put him in the A tier. So yeah, so it's a very strong brawler. I'm putting him in the A tier. Next for the A tier, we have Nita. Now Nita is also a very strong brawler. She recently received a hypercharge, and her hypercharge just makes her absolutely broken and just insane in many, many different game modes. You know, like her in Brawl Ball, it does a ton of damage. Her gadget, her stun gadget is pretty good. Her star power is pretty good. You know, Hyper Bear and the other one, I forget the name, is a Faux Fur, or is that a gadget? You know, she's just overall an insane brawler. She has very good gear, very good gadgets, very good star powers, and has become a just extremely good and extremely useful brawler. So I'm putting her in the A tier, not quite S tier, but A tier. So yeah. Next up in the A tier, we also have Meg. Now, Meg actually received a bit of an unexpected and a very good change to her attack. She received a bit of a rework. Now, Meg has actually been pretty good recently. You know, I don't think that her rework was needed, but it actually makes her pretty good. You know, they buffed her, the amount of projectiles she sends out. They buffed, you know, they buffed, you know, her damage they nerfed her damage per projectile, but she sends more projectiles, and you know the amount outweighs the damage. And they nerfed a little bit of her range, but again, the amount of projectiles makes up for it. So I think that, you know, even with or without this change, she's consistently an A tier brawler. She's very essential. She's just not that good out of her suit. So that is why I'm choosing to put Meg in the A tier. So yeah. Next up in the A tier, I have Brock. Now, Brock has actually been a pretty good brawler for quite some time now. You know, he recently received a hypercharge that was extremely bad. One of, if not the worst hypercharges in the game. He's just his hypercharge was really was not strong. But in the upcoming update, Season 28, he's actually receiving a buff to his hypercharge. More damage per rocket, a slightly larger range, and he becomes very useful and very essential. The hypercharge is the buff to his hypercharge, and his damage makes him extremely good damage dealer and extremely strong brawler. So I'm choosing to put him in the A tier. Apolgize. Next to the A tier, Lily. Now Lily has, on her release, Lily was actually not the best. She was actually maybe a C tier, maybe A tier. Sorry, maybe C tier, B tier brawler at best. But in the recent update, she actually received an extremely good nerf. Her ammo is going from 1 ammo to 2, and now she is very good against brawlers. If paired with her super, she can do insanely good damage, and therefore becomes extremely strong. So that is why I'm choosing to put her in the A tier. Very good. Not the best, but again, extremely good. Next up in the A tier, we have Amber. Now Amber, that's Barley. Next up in the A tier, we have Amber. Amber has just always been pretty good. She does a lot of damage. Her super's pretty good. Her gadget, they buffed to her gadget, which was a long time ago, but it's still extremely essential. Her gears are pretty good. Her star powers are bright, and she's just overall a very strong brawler. She does a lot of damage, essential in many game modes. So I'm just choosing to put her in the A tier. I think that if they give her a little buff, she could easily become an S tier. So yeah. I'm putting her in an A tier for now. Next in the A tier, we have Colt. Now, Colt has consistently just been an extremely strong brawler. His hypercharge is very useful, very strong in many scenarios. He just does so much damage. Both his gadgets are good. Both his star powers are pretty good. The range one and the speed one. And I think that if they don't give him any nerfs or any buffs, he can consistently be an A tier, if not S tier brawler. So right now I'm choosing to put him in the A tier, as it's pretty easy to dodge his shots, but he's still just very strong. So I'm putting him in the A tier. Yep. Next up in the A tier, I have Rico. Now, Rico in the upcoming update receives a hypercharge, but along with that, he also receives a little bit of a nerf to his multi-ball launcher gadget. Now, before this nerf, that gadget was one of the best gadgets in the game. It completely shredded any brawler getting close to him, like Edgar. When I was playing some Edgar Mastery, it was super annoying to face off against a Rico with that gadget, because even if I gadgeted, like use the shield gadget, it just shreds, and that could be used against so many brawlers. But it received a little bit of a nerf, but I think that his hypercharge, which is also being added, makes up for that. It increases the range by a lot, damage buff, speed buff, etc. It makes him really strong, so I'm choosing to put him in the A tier. Yeah. So yeah, with the Sid Lord, I apologize. Yeah, I apologize. I did not mean to say that. And yeah, with that Sid Lord, I said it. So with that said, I am choosing to put Rico in the A tier, and yeah, so I apologize for that. Just a little mistake on my end, and I apologize. With that said, So with that said, I'm choosing to put Rico in the A tier. Now with that said, I think that one of, if not the final brawlers.
Laundry. Dude, seriously?
What? It fell.
You're terrible at basketball, apparently. It fell, Carter. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 items outside the laundry. 1, 2, 3 inside. You're not even at a 50-50 rate.
Thank you. I apologize, but so I'm choosing Puerto Rico in the A tier. Now next up in the A tier, one of, if not the final brawlers, or actually there's a few more brawlers I'm putting in the A tier, but another brawler I'm going to put in the A tier is Poco. Now Poco is just very annoying to go against. He's very strong. Both his star powers are very good. His range just makes him very good. both his star power and just his normal attack. You know, because his super, if you have Squishy solo, it's very easy to recharge your super. But his other star power is very good. Also, if you just want to heal your teammates, he's just a very strong brawler, very well rounded. I think that if he had a hypercharge, he could become the S tier brawler, but just very good now. Very annoying to play against just because of, well, how good he is. So I'm choosing to put him in the A tier. Yeah. Next in the A tier, I have Buzz. Buzz, you know, he is also just a very strong brawler. He does insane amounts of damage up close. His stun is very good. His super is very good, easy to charge with his star power. Has a very good gadget and for both bushy maps, and he has the other gadget like the the reserve buoy. He has that for just other game modes. Very strong. And maybe a bit of a damage buff or a hypercharge buff could give him a bit of a could make him a bit of a better brawler, but I think he's very good and very well-rounded right now. So, yeah. Next up in the A tier, I have Tick. Now, Tick, with his recent hypercharge and, you know, that recent buff, he has just become insanely strong. He's just very good. His star power's alright. His gadget's alright. His, hypercharge is very good. His damage is very good. He's a bit squishy. That's what's keeping him from being an S tier brawler. But, you know, his hypercharge, again, just insanely good. And he's just a really well-rounded brawler. Very annoying to go against. A bit of no skill, but I think regardless, he's just very strong. So, yeah, she's a bit of an A tier. So, yeah. So, that said, I think that, you know, all these belong in the A tier. And another brawler that I'm choosing to put in the A tier, only have a few more, is Colette. Now, Colette hasn't received any buffs or nerfs in a bit. You know, she's consistently been a good brawler. She's very good against tanks. She's very good against just many brawlers. Both her star powers are pretty good. Her heal gadget's very good. Her other gadget's also pretty good, but she's just an insanely strong brawler, and I'm choosing to put it in the A tier. Super hypercharge, very good, just well-rounded, very good brawler. Next up in the A tier, I also have Barley. Now, Barley has recently received a hypercharge. His hypercharge is a bit underwhelming. I expected something a bit similar to, like, Brock's hypercharge, you know, which just would make him rain down a lot more bottles. But, you know, it's a bit underwhelming. It's actually still pretty good. You know, it breaks bushes, not walls, which is good for him. You know, and he just does a lot of damage. His gadget and star power are pretty good, and he's just a pretty good brawler, so I'm choosing to put him in the A tier. Next up in the A tier, one of the final brawlers that I'm choosing to put in the A tier is Gale. Now, Gale also recently is receiving a hypercharge. He's very strong. You know, he does a lot of damage. He's one of, if not the best, in the quickfire game mode. But, you know, he just lacks a bit of damage, and I think his hypercharge could be a bit better, but overall I think he's very strong and very good. So I'm choosing to put in the A tier, so yeah. So with that said, one of the last brawlers, maybe like two more, is RT. I'm gonna put RT in the A tier. Now, I recently got RT as one of my brawlers, and he's just insanely good. I mean, he's a kick counter, he's an Edgar counter, he's a Jackie counter, he's a close range brawler counter, he's very good long range, his attack is super fast, he does tons of damage, both his gadgets are good, his quick math star power is very good, and he's just an insanely strong brawler. Borderline S, but I'm just going to put him in A tier for right now, but I think that he could easily become an S tier brawler if he isn't already. So with that said, the final, if not the final brawler that I'm going to put in the in the A tier is, where is she? I'm going to put Ems in the A tier. Now, Ems also recently received a hypercharge. She's a bit no skill, but she just does so much damage. She does so much damage. Her super is very good. Her gear is very good. Star power is good. Gadget's good. She can play long range. She can play short range. And overall, she's just an insanely good brawler. I mean, she's very, very good in many scenarios. And yeah, and I think that if you max her out with a new hypercharge, very good. So I'm choosing to put her in the S tier. So I think that should complete the A tier, and for these final brawlers, I'm going to explain why I put them in the S tier, and, well, yeah. Excuse me. First off, Byron. Byron easily goes in the S tier. Now, Byron, he isn't necessarily broken on his own. The Kairos also said this, but, if paired with literally any other brawler, he can be so strong. I mean, because of his heal, his gadget, his star power, his, just him in general, he just does so much damage. He does so much healing, and he's just an insanely strong brawler. And he's actually been pretty good, and I'm choosing to put him in the S tier, and yeah. Next up in the S tier, I also want to put Frank. Now, this is one of the largest jumps in tier, like the tier list history, going from an S tier to an F tier brawler. I think Kit also did something similar, but it's just crazy. I mean, Frank, his new rework just makes him one of, if not the best brawlers in the game. His hypercharge, which goes in a circle, does so much damage. His new rework, which gives him more attack speed, just becomes so much more good. So much better. His gadget is irreversible attraction or whatever, also extremely good. His star power, the power grab one, very good. He's just an amazing brawler, and I think that if they don't nerf him, he can consistently be an A tier brawler. So yeah, next up in the next up in the S tier, I also have Piper. Now Piper, another just very good brawler, also recently received a hypercharge, which is very good. It pushes enemies away, and it just makes her so much more stronger against close range brawlers. It also opens up the map and makes her just insanely good. She's good against long range brawlers, she's good against short range brawlers, mid range brawlers, no matter what, she's just good. And I'm choosing to put her in the S tier, one of the best brawlers in the game right now. Next up in the S tier, I have Draco. Now, Draco, he received a few emergency buffs right before his release, and those just absolutely carried him in becoming a good brawler. Before those buffs, he just wasn't that strong, but he received a bit of a nerf, to his gadget, and in the upcoming update, he's receiving a bit of a nerf to his the damage he can receive in his super. He used to, I think he used to take 25%, now he just takes 15. But I think that regardless of these changes, he's just very good. He's overall good, and in many situations, just insanely strong brawler. I'm putting in the S tier, yeah. I think that a lot of people would agree with me on that one. Next in the S tier, we also have Angela. Now, Angela also has received a bit of a nerf in this upcoming update. She has received two big nerfs. Now, one of that is they reduced her attack damage. At max level, full charge, it used to do 4,400 damage. Now they reduced that to 4,000 damage, which means she cannot kill Tick anymore in one hit, a full Tick. But I think that regardless, her hypercharge, and they also gave her a bit of a supercharged nerf, where it takes more hits to charge her super. I think it might be 4 instead of 3, or 3 instead of 2. But I think that regardless, with the inclusion of her new hypercharge, he's just insanely strong, does so much damage. New hypercharge, which makes his welcome to the Swamp Fall of Barad. He's just very good. Choosing to put him in S tier. Next up in the S tier, we have Cordelius. Now, Cordelius hasn't received any buffs or any nerfs in a bit. He actually did receive a bit of a nerf a while ago, but because of his complete darkness hypercharge and his just insanely good gadget and a pretty good star power, he's just consistently been very good. He's good at Brawl, he's good at Knockout, he's good at Hot Zone, he's good at many situations, and he's just an overall great brawler. Next up is Jean. Now, Jean is similar to the Byron in the sense that, they're not broken on their own. Jean actually just isn't broken on its own. Like, he's not the best in solo showdown or in other game modes, like in duels and whatnot, but, because of his ability to just be insane in team play, that makes him a crazy brawler. Both his gadgets are very good. His star power is very good. Not the Spirit Slap one, the other one, the Friendly Puffs or whatever. He's just so good. He has good gears, he has good gadgets, star powers, and he's just insanely good when paired with some others. Like, I was playing with my friends, and they did an RT super and Gale combo where Gale used his super and RT also used his super. It's just an instant kill, and it was just broken, basically. So Jean is a very strong brawler now with the recent introduction of his hypercharge. Very good, does good damage. Maybe a bit of a lacking on the reload speed, but I think it just makes it just how good he is. So yeah. Next up in the S tier, Melody. Now Melody has Melody has also received, likewise to Angelo, a little bit of a nerf. Now she didn't receive any damage nerfs, but the nerf that she did receive was a health nerf. You know, her max health is decreasing. I think it was maybe like 10% or something. She actually did it did remove a fair amount of damage on her, but I think that regardless, she's still very strong. She counters many brawlers. She's easy to use and just overall good brawler. Yeah. Next in the S tier, I have Jessie. Now, Jessie, from personal experience, is an extremely annoying brawler to face against. Her hypercharge is super good. Her gadget's super good. Her star power is super good. She gets her hypercharge so quickly. Her hypercharge super does so much damage. She does so much damage. Her attacks are pretty annoying, and she's just very good. So she's put in the S tier. Next in the S tier, staying in the S tier, is Belle. Now Belle also just very, very good. She's just super strong. She's super good. Her hypercharge had a bit of a nerf recently, or a bit ago, but it's still just super good. She does so much damage. She's one of the best long range brawlers in the game, and just very strong. So she's going to put in the S tier. Next in the S tier, one of the final brawlers that I'm putting the S tier is Max. Now Max also has recently received, not in the latest update, but the update before this new one, is she received a hypercharge. I think it's one of the best, if not the best, hypercharge in the game. She does very good damage. Her gadget's very good, and if you just use her correctly, she's so good in so many scenarios. I've been using her a lot in Hot Zone, and she's just broken. You know, her hypercharge good. It charges very fast. Super is good. Gadget's good. Star power is good. She's just good. Next up, the final brawler that I am going to rank the final brawler out of the selection is Sandy. Now, Sandy also recently received a hypercharge, but in this most recent update, she's receiving a few vital nerfs. Now, that's good, honestly, because Sandy was the best brawler in the game easily, but because of these nerfs, she is a bit weaker, but still, because of her hypercharge, because of her insane damage, good gadget, good star power, she's just very good, and good gear. Yes, that is why I'm choosing to put her in the S tier. Now, so with this said, I think that this is a pretty good tier list. Now, again, this is my opinion. This doesn't mean that this is definite. I'm sure many people could disagree with, I have a little bit of bias on, like, Mr. P, which some people I think would rank him a bit lower. Maybe I've gotten a few things wrong, but I think that this is good. I think that it's very good. But feel free to disagree with me if you think anything else of it, but I think that's good. And while I'm here, I'm also going to rank the new brawlers. Now, first of all, Clancy I think is an S tier brawler. He's so good. He's like a mix of Barley, a mix of Bull, a mix of Carl with his super. His healing, he's super good. So I think that on release he's gonna be S tier. Not the best brawler, but or actually maybe even the best brawler. He's very good even on release, just by looking at him, and even just by with people test or have anyone test him out, maybe whatever. And with that, Barry, I think. Oh wait, sorry, Clancy, the other brawler. I think he's gonna be A tier. He's very strong. He's similar to Surge, but does more damage. His super is pretty good, and I think he's very strong. So with that said, I think that this is a pretty good tier list. Feel free again to tell me if you disagree. Devin Aradia, Kishore Aradia, Yellow Ledbetter. So I think that this is a pretty good tier list, and again, disagree. And the best brawler in the game right now, I think currently is maybe even Draco or Gene's pretty good, but I think that's a pretty good tier list. And keep in mind that these are each just loose tiers. Like Byron, just because Byron's in front of Gene, that doesn't mean Byron's better than Gene. This is just what tiers they are. Like, for example, like Mr. P's not better than Dynamite or something. Like Dynamite's better, but it's not in any particular order besides the tiers. Yeah. So thank you for listening. Thank you for caring, devastating, and so thank you. And I think that is pretty good tier list. So again, feel free to disagree, and thank you.